This is Flint, and you're listening to G.I. Joe, a real American headcast.
Can the world oppose the deadliest of foes? Cobra. Joes will risk it all to end the evil call of Cobra. They never give up, they never say die, walking tall with banners high. They sound the battle cry.
G.I. Joe, the Real American Headcast, is the code name for Aaron's daring, highly trained headcast. Its purpose? To podcast about G.I. Joe, fighting Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world.
Fighting for freedom wherever there's trouble, relentlessly and retreat! G.I. Joe! G.I. Joe is there! G.I. Joe!
Hey, Joe's Brother Head here. So here we are with episode 61. Before I get started, I do want to say that this episode is sponsored by Sean Adams and Big Danny Cool. They're over there on patreon.com/headcast network. I want to thank you both very much for sponsoring the show. And now let's get started with today's show. Let's introduce my guest, I guess. You all know me. I'm Brother Head. Today I have joining me, we have the newest podcaster in the podcasting world, Mr. Brad Abraham.
Now let me take a wild guess here. You're Brett, right?
Yeah.
I thought so.
Hey, Brad.
Hey, Aaron. How are you?
All right, man. How you doing?
I'm good. Well, I mean, I'm not entirely good. I did mention before the show I was fighting a bit of a cold, but
Right.
the plus of that is I will keep my long-winded blatherings to a minimum, which means no excessively derogatory comments about Raptor this episode.
Damn it. I'm out.
There's always next time. You'll be happy here, and well, it's quite a ways down the road, but in the 90s you'll be happy. But we'll get to that later on. Also joining us, my fellow G.I. Joe role player, Charles Cushman, a.k.a. Classified.
Secret agent man, secret agent man. They've given you a number and taken away your name. Secret agent.
Thought you were going to hover another reverse. That is fantastic. That is as good at anything as I could. I was a little afraid, but that was as good as anything I could have imagined. So yeah.
Charles, glad you could join us. Glad to have you here, man. And last, but definitely not least, we have my fellow Californian, fellow podcaster with his own network of a million shows, Mr. Kevin Reitzel, a.k.a. Raider Nerd.
Exciting football music. Yeah.
Hey,
What's
Kevin.
up, man? What's up, General Head? Good to see you.
Glad you could join us, man. Always good to see you. We're here to talk about issue 61 of G.I. Joe. Spoilers.
Spoilers.
Fantastic issue, but we'll get to that. So this is issue 61. The title of this one was called Beginnings and Endings. The cover date, July of 1987. The on-sale date, April the 7th, 1987. The cover price, $1. Written as normal by Larry Hama. Pencil by William Marshall Rogers. Inker, Daniel Glodani. Letterer, Joseph Rosen. The colorist was Bob Sharon. And the editor was Bob Harris. The cover of this was done by Mike Zeck and Bob McLeod, according to Mike's Amazing World of Comics.
Zag, 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 zag.
Well, it's a Zek, 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 Zek. No baity, no baity, no baity, but Zek, Zek. So it's great.
But anyways, yes. Yeah, Jared was going to join us with the restraining order, improper touching and all that.
Damn it.
Yeah, plus he's got his own life and podcasts and shows and family stuff. Family, who needs it? I mean, anyways, the cover of G.I. Joe number 61. The cover has Stalker, Snow Job, and Quick Kick. They're up against the wall with a spotlight shining on them. Behind them in silhouette, we have barbed wire. There's bullets splattering all around them. Quick Kick is down and probably holding a wound, it looks like, while Stalker and Snow Job are firing back at our unseen assailants. So let's get some thoughts on this issue. First of all, Brad, do you have thoughts on this issue or this cover?
Yeah, this is an outstanding cover. I mean, across the board, both the action, the use of color. I love them being backed into a literal corner here. It looks like a last stand. I love the little bits of razor wire in the background and that very sinister deep blue. So there's a lot of blues and blacks happening, and they're kind of surrounded by all that, which is a really great stylistic choice. And I can remember seeing this one on the spinner rack back in the day at my local comic shop and looking at the cover and going, finally, no Raptor, no Zanzibar, no Glimmer Twins, no Chameleon Man, just three desperate Joes in a desperate situation with their backs again against that literal wall. I think it's a great cover, and great cover, great issue, kicks a lot of butt.
Very much so. Yes. And Charles, thoughts on this cover?
Feels like a Special Missions. About half the comic feels like a Special Missions as well, and we all know how much we love those things. Yeah, this is. I don't know if it's top 10. I would have to figure out what the other 9 were. But I love this unambiguously.
And Kevin, thoughts?
Yeah, this is one of the ones that always catch your eye. As I always like to reference, thumbing through the back issues of, a comic book shop or something like that, or a convention. And I love the fact that you get the Joes on the cover looking like the Joes you're used to seeing, like on an action figure, their action figure card, stuff like that. And I always love the fact that I noticed there was a thread I shared this thread on Facebook on a couple of GI Joe sites, including the Real American Hero, of which one of these GI Joes do you want leading your group, and it was a list of a lot of the famous GI Joe characters like Duke and Hawk and Stalker and a bunch of others. And Stalker was my choice. I've always loved Stalker, and I felt he got kind of, shafted a little bit later about taking on leadership type roles. And I just love you throw Stalker in a cover, you're gonna get me with it. And I love the fact that he's shooting like the famous Russian machine gun that was used a lot during World War II and carried over. I think it was the PPSH-41 with a 71 round magazine capacity with the drum. And you also saw, I believe, some of the Red October guys. One of the Red October guys carried one as well. Him carrying that gun, not his normal gun, you're immediately looking at the cover going, what is going on here? And it's very memorable too. I loved it. Could have used a little more blood around Quick Kick, but otherwise it's pretty good.
Yeah, that's. I'm assuming he's injured the way he's laying, but yeah, he could have more blood on him. But yeah, no, fantastic cover, as you guys have said. Like I said previously, my first issue, the actual series was 58. So this was like my first major storyline after starting the book. Yeah, I remember seeing this one on the, I was actually going to a comic shop at this point. So yeah, I'd seen it at the comic shop and like, what the heck? What's going on here? Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah, the use of the colors, the way that the 3 main characters are spotlighted with that spotlight. And yeah, the shadows around them, and yeah, that deep blue sky behind them. You can tell that, yeah, as Brad said, yeah, they're literally have their backs against the wall, and it does not look good for our Joes, which we'll get into. So let's get some ratings on this out of 1 to 5 Yojo Colas. 1 being sucks, 3 being decent, and 5 being something that you want to. What are we doing there? What are you doing there, Kevin? Oh, wow. Hang on your ball.
I'm just, this was the cover that got like, what was it, like 1,000 out of 5?
Like that.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure it was straight.
Yeah, so that would be a 5-star cover there. Anyways, Brad.
Oh, boy. I'll give this one a 4. It's not quite wall mountable like the one behind Kevin, but it is an outstanding cover, and I think it really draws your attention, and it just really gives a great summary of what happens in the issue and in Quick Kick's particular case, what happens when you bring nunchucks to a gunfight.
That's all Quick Kick needs normally. Anyways, Charles, 1 to 5 Yo-Yo
Well,
Golas.
I mean, nobody mentioned that about the two. I do want to point out two things about Quick Kick before I give my rating. For number one, him like holding the nunchucks up to his heart, kind of, and him being massively both poorly dressed and poorly equipped for this kind of fight. I mean, it's so serious. It's almost comedic that you've got this guy dressed this way who is being held in, but also there appears to be like almost a classical influence. Like this looks like French war art where like they're, holding somebody who's wounded and dying kind of thing. So it definitely, it's very interesting. And for that reason, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. I think that there is something here that they're drawing on that I cannot put a name on, but I definitely recognize as making it art rather than just comic characters on a page.
Very nice thoughts. I like that. And Kevin.
I'm with the big brain on Brad. I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. I think that's a really good score. Not poster material for me, but definitely a damn good cover.
Decent. Again, I'm gonna go with Charles, and I'm gonna give it a 5 also. Yeah, like I say, it's one that I think of when I think of G.I. Joe, especially this era of G.I. Joe.
Does that mean you're hanging it on your wall?
If I get another copy, well, yes, I've only got the one right now, and I'm not sure on wall space, but I've got to get things hung back up. I'm still slowly working on Manland. But yes, it is one I would hang on my wall. It's probably in my top 10 of G.I. Joe covers. So, yes, very nice. So, anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the actual story. So, the synopsis on this one. This issue basically have 2 stories interweaved. One story shows Billy confronting Cobra Commander about his past and how Cobra Commander destroyed Billy's life, which we've talked about in several past issues. He said he's leaving to start his life anew without his dad. Fred and Raptor attempt to stop him, but Billy makes them see the error of their ways. The commander confronts his son, and Billy tells him that he won't turn him in no matter what. The commander allows him to leave. Billy leaves and joins Jinx to restart his training. Meanwhile, Cobra Commander announces he's giving up being Cobra Commander and going to turn over a new leaf. Not accepting that as an answer, Fred shoots Cobra Commander and picks up the armor, saying, "Good thing about the armor, anyone could be in it." Meanwhile, the other story has Hawk sending Stalker, Quick Kick, Snowjob, and Outback to Barovia to free a reporter named Devin Winchell. They get aliases and told they will be discharged from the service so the government can maintain a basis for denial. They go and meet their new contact named Spigu. I'm probably mispronouncing that. They get to the prison where they discover that the State Department already traded Winchell for a Barovian prisoner. Attempting to escape, Snowjob and Quick Kick get wounded. Spigu, or however you pronounce it, sacrifices himself so the Joes can attempt to escape. Finding themselves cornered, Stalker orders Outback to get out to let the Joes know what happened. To be continued in Special Missions number 6 and Bravo Team number 32. So those are the details for this issue. Let's go and talk about it. So I've got the entire comic here. I'm just going to flip through as we talk. Let's go and start with Brad. Brad, do you have thoughts on this issue?
Oh boy, where to begin? I think it's been said before, probably by me, that I think we would all agree that the first 50 or so issues of Real American Hero are about as solid as the comic ever got. Just certainly all-time classic stories in that first 50. But that's not to say that the next 50 are any slouch either, because this issue kicks off one of my favorite storylines, being the whole Behind the Iron Curtain, Trapped in Barovnia storyline. And it's interesting that in between all the other G.I. Joe Cobra shenanigans, we sometimes forget in the world of the comic that there's a whole world beyond that central conflict. And in the comic with Barovnia, and you've got Sierra Gordo, and you've got Transcarpathia, and the Republic of Benzine, Larry gives us these stand-in analogs to real-world hotspots of the time. Sierra Gordo is clearly Central America. Barovnia is somewhere in Eastern Europe before the Iron Curtain came down. Transcarpathia is Transylvania, Romania. Benzine is generally Middle Eastern. But, here we have Stalker, Snowjob, Quick Kick, and Outback behind the Iron Curtain as their mission goes sideways. And, as I said, it's funny that the more outlandish this comic is about to get, with missions into space, of all places, that there's still room for this very grounded tale. Like Charles had mentioned that this feels very much, it looks very much like a Special Missions cover, and it feels very much like a Special Missions story. And I think we've also said that it seems like doing Special Missions kind of lit that fire in Larry to kind of try and push some more real world, grittier storytelling in amongst all the more fantastical elements that Hasbro was pushing the line in, which to be fair, I think that was when a lot of early readers started to kind of drift away from it. It was becoming a little too much of a toy type of line, where every issue new toy was introduced, new action figures were introduced. But to have so much of this issue devoted to these four Joes trying to pull off a mission and have it going catastrophically sideways feels like stuff we used to get in the first 20 or so issues of G.I. Joe before the storytelling became really serialized. You could have these one-offs, but this isn't a one-off. This is going to kick off a pretty major storyline, and I think one of the more memorable ones. So I think overall it's a top-tier issue of the comic, both for the A plot but also the B plot. I'm not going to touch on the B plot because I know everyone else wants to say their piece on it, but I think there's just, the one big moment in this one really kind of changes the playing field as well. But it was the Borovnia storyline that really kept me hanging on the comic a lot longer, because I think I was starting to drift from it at this point. And this issue came out, and I was like, oh, I'm like Michael Corleone in Godfather Part 3. They're pulling me back in. So I really appreciate it for that one as well. But I just want to touch briefly on the artwork, because there's an interesting story behind it. It's that Marshall Rogers' work. He was one of those great old school artists, not in a bad way. Just, he had a very specific, type of meat and potatoes, get in there, get the job done approach. And there are several issues of the comic forthcoming that he's an illustrator on. And at first reading it or rereading it again, I felt the art looked a little rushed. But then I remembered this is pretty well documented, because he was not the original artist on this issue. The original artist was my true story distant cousin, Todd McFarlane, who had illustrated issue 60, which we gave several body blows to when we reviewed the issue a few months back. But he illustrated 60 and then 61, but his work on 61 was rejected, and Rogers was brought in literally at the 11th hour to completely draw the book from start to finish. So it does have a bit of a rushed feel to it. And the McFarlane version was printed later on, after the initial run had ended, the original Real American Hero comic run had ended.
Can you clarify that a little bit for me? Like, when and where was it published, and how and why?
It was published after, to the best of my knowledge, after A Real American Hero ended around issue 150.
Okay.
In the mid 90s, and a few months later they published a special version of it that basically printed the issue with McFarlane's art on it. And I actually had to track down a Comic Book Resources article that was published back in 2019, where they posted some pages by comparison. So I would say to you and anybody listening, just do a Google search on Todd McFarlane G.I. Joe 61, and you'll be taken to probably the Comic Book Resources article about it, where they kind of show comparisons between this issue's art and McFarlane's art. You can kind of see the differences of it, and I'm not going to pass judgment on it. Some of it's really McFarlane's work, I think, is actually really interesting and really solid. In other cases, it looks a little kind of I can kind of see why they weren't really happy with it, just because it took some big leaps in the depictions of the characters. It was a lot more cartoony, and I think maybe just they felt that the gravitas of the story was not being served by the artwork as well. But that is really all my main thoughts on the issue. It's a great issue. It kicks off a great storyline. There's some interesting behind the scenes stories behind it, but that's all I'm going to say for right now.
And I posted a link in the chat to the Comic Book Resources. In fact, it was released as a G.I. Joe special #1 with Snake Eyes on the cover, crouched down, kind of in a Spider-Man pose, all bloodied. Or maybe is that blood? That's not blood. I don't know what that is. There's red.
It's a symbiote. It's the symbiote suit. Snake Eyes suit.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, it's an odd choice coloring. But anyways, so I've got the link there in the chat if you guys want to check it out. And before we move on, Heinz has joined us in the chat. He says, "Good afternoon, gentlemen." Give him a shout out. Heinz, thank you for joining us, my friend. And again, here is the link for the CBR that Brad was just talking about. So definitely check that out. And if I don't forget, I'll put a link in the Facebook group also. So, Charles, thoughts on this issue of G.I. Joe?
I would say, believe it or not, I hadn't actually noticed the difference in quality art until Brad just pointed it out. And now I see it. I can't unsee it. But it really didn't make an impression on me. It actually felt sort of deliberate, because it was such a darker story than the typical ones are. But I noticed, like, even in the shading on Hawk's pants, when you see what you were looking at right there, and I'm assuming that's Hawk. Yeah, Hawk. All those shaded lines that are there, that was probably done for speed rather than for but it was nicely covered up by the fact that the light only covered those different pieces. So, but you can see kind of in the 4-panel on the next screen how it obviously isn't a great depiction of those particular characters. And at the end of it, I really didn't care. I felt very much like this was pulling me in from the very beginning. Brad was really nice at leaving me this to talk about, and so sorry, Kevin. But it's the one where Cobra Commander gets shot in the back, and it is the most cold-blooded thing I think I'd seen in a comic book to that point. Like, it is not the comic code prevented blood. I mean, you couldn't get the blood that you would wanted on that cover, because very much so the comic code little badge that's on there would not allow that. Blood was definitely something that was a no-no. There were a few of them, but that one was a particular one. But on page 11, boom, like no question at all. And to the point where as events eventually poured out, I don't know if I could say, oh no, I shouldn't spoil something that's like, I don't know, 30 years old at this point. But that looks pretty conclusive. Like, that is very much I've shot you through a major organ and you have fallen on the ground. But that one panel down at the bottom, you mentioned it before, great thing about this armor, could be anyone inside, is that I've never seen a more perfect end scene. Like, this is the end of Act 2, right? You absolutely, or the end of Act 1, I suppose. You've absolutely drawn a line here about this is the end of this part of the story, but there is more to come. And I think that in these more lit scenes, which are based with the other ones, it was really contrasting with the very dark nature of everything else. Everyone dressed in black, the blacks and comic blues, which are so hard to ink because it's not really an easy thing to do. If you pause for a second here, when he broke out and he was hiding in the sewer with the gun pointed up and choosing not to do something, that was gutting. That is so hard to look at as the blood falls down on his face. And they make it so it looks like water, so they get past the comic code piece of it, but literally the blood coming down on his face. It is horrifying because you're not used to these guys losing, but more importantly, you're not used to the kind of decision that this guy with one gun and a whole bunch of people has to make here about either getting out and getting help or just letting loose on the gun, and all of them ending up as a very noble pile of bodies. And yeah, this one here is 100% as gritty and grim as this comic gets, and is probably the better for it. I also think that one other piece for it, and I'm going to leave a little bit for Kevin to talk about, is I think this is the first time it ever made reference to like a crossover with another comic series. I think this one requires you to it's continued in special missions. So this is something that obviously Marvel built an entire brand on later on, a couple of years later, associated with making you read some of the comic in order to be able to read it, in order to finish the story. This is the first time I'd actually seen it. I was collecting both comics, but I was like, you mean I would have to buy a different comic line in order to be able to just find out how this one ends? Well, I hope they don't start doing that a lot.
No. It'll never happen.
Then the 90s came, and there was only that. So what it comes down to is that this was in many ways like if the Raptor and Pogo and all that kind of thing that came right before it was a departure from the old and a flight into the fanciful, this is the landing face first into the mud that followed after it, because it just did not get grimmer or grittier than this. So hats off. Well done.
Very nice. And Kevin, thoughts on this?
Both Charles and Brad did a great job of summing up the issues there. And I did want to mention, I want to touch on the alter. I was looking at that link, looking at the alternate work that Todd McFarlane did. What's his name? Liefeld that can't draw feet. Is that the dude?
Yes, Rob Liefeld.
Rob Liefeld, yeah. Well, I just want to say that going forward your distant cousin McFarlane, Brad, should never, ever draw Stalker ever again. my God. That was horrible and blasphemous. And oh my God, I could see why that they were, saying, nah, the cover of that was with the snake eyes looked really, really cool, though. I'll give that. The other thing I wanted to mention, because everyone else kind of touched on it, I'll touch on the Cobra Commander getting shot thing with me, because that's the most memorable thing about this comic for me, to be perfectly honest with you, because to echo what Charles was saying, seeing someone like Cobra Commander just get, shot in the back, not in the front, just shot in the back, just executed by Fred, was shocking to me. And what's really interesting too is I have forgotten like what I know the scene well, I know the panel so well, but I had always forgotten at times like, wait, what was the comic? I couldn't remember the comic. And to me, I almost felt like maybe the comic cover should have kind of teased that happening, but not showing it,
Right.
And on a related note, I want to touch on the other little side thing that's happening in this issue is the thing with Billy. He still kicking ass with being trained by ninjas and with his prosthetic leg and his one eye. And I love the scene too when he meets up with Jinx, who's hiding up there in the rafters and comes down kind of like a ghost, which I thought was really, really cool. Yeah, there's a scene right there. I thought that was good. Of stuff that we'll see later. With Billy, which I always liked. I liked that Billy survived that car explosion and was able to find his legs, so to speak, in the, in the ninja world and stuff like that. But regarding the cover and the main story, it was nice to see a small group, sent on a mission that did not end well. And as Charles was alluded to, yeah, I don't remember, like, I was getting both comics, both special missions and, of course, the regular GI. I was getting everything G.I. Joe. So I was just like, okay, this is kind of cool. It's interesting. I don't know if this type of thing will work, if you're trying to, push you off to other comics. To let you guys know, I didn't really read other comics except for maybe some Star Wars comics and I was getting Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but when it came to like superhero type comics with crossovers and stuff like that, I wasn't into that stuff. But I was just like, okay, I'll read special missions, and and here's the cover of the special missions, which shows Outback, hiding in the snow with Russian type characters that are following him, So I thought that was, there it is. Next Bravo Team 32. And so what's funny is when I read it for this issue or for this episode that we're recording now, I'm like, well, I got to read this now because I want to know what happens, but I know we'll get into that later, which is good. But back to the whole Cobra Commander thing. That is one of the most famous things to happen in G.I. Joe, personally. And for me, to where we even, recreated it with our G.I. Joe Finest costume group, where we had a lot of fun, recreating a lot of famous scenes throughout the comics and stuff like that. And that was one of the things that we did later on. Do you have those slides? Or we're going to talk about that later?
We'll talk about that later.
Okay, cool. But that to me, but like I said, I always forgot what the cover was, to be honest with you, until I was reminded just recently going over this. So yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, I agree with everything I just said. This is a very memorable issue. Like I said, I just started a few issues ago. So this, and again, I picked it up because Cobra Commander was in the battle armor, reinvented and all this. And I knew Cobra Commander from the cartoons. I'm like, oh, cool, he's got a new battle armor. He's going to kick butt. And then this issue came. And especially this page I got it on right now. Yeah, we're not only did he get shot through the back, but yeah, we see, I don't know if it's the bullet exiting or what, but it looks like the bullet's exiting out the front with that shot in the front of his chest. I'm like, oh yeah, he's dead. We're never going to see Cobra Commander again. Wow. And again, keep in mind, I was relatively new to comics. I'd always been a superhero fan, but I just started picking up comics. Yeah, I thought Cobra Commander was gone for good because that looks like a fatal shooting right there. Because it's not just the bullet going in his back. Yeah, it looks like I don't know if it's supposed to be the bullet exiting or if it's just his shirt poofing out. But yeah, it looks like a bullet exiting. So I'm like, yeah. That's
an exit one. That's an exit one right there.
That's what it looks like, but I'm like, yeah, we're never going to see him again. Well, that was interesting. Okay, well, that's what this Fred guy does. I do like, yeah, anyone could be in this armor. I like how that plays out over the next few months, but we'll get to that in the future. But yeah, and like I say, the other part, yeah, I do like, Billy going to, I'm kind of going backwards now, but yeah, Billy going to see Jinx and to continue his training. Again, I started picking up other comic books because I found a comic book shop to find back issues of G.I. Joe. Because again, I started 58. I'm like, so what's going on with the other stuff? So I'm going looking for back issues. And while I'm there, I'm finding these other comics I want to pick up. I saw, I think it was Amazing Spider-Man 314, where him and Mary Jane are being evicted, and there's a Santa Claus out front. Oh, that's an interesting cover. I'll pick that one up. And I just slowly start picking up more and more books. And yeah, buying G.I. Joe and looking for the back issues is what got me into that. So definitely was interested in seeing where, we got Ninja Train. Let me see where this happened. And yeah, the main story itself, because again, it's on the cover, but the whole undercover operation going into Barovia to free the reporter, and come find out that the State Department's already freed him. I'm like, oh yeah, classic government screw up there. One hand doesn't know what the other hand's doing. The Joes are being sent in to free this guy. Meanwhile, the State Department's doing a trade. Oh, this is going to work out great. And yeah, just this, like I said, was the first major G.I. Joe story I was on the ground floor for. So I just love how the story, as you guys said, we get, the team captured, and Outback's underneath looking up as the blood's dripping down on him of his teammates. And I say this story arc, I said, we talked about Outback when he first appeared and how badass he was. He showed up. Well, I've been living off the land, living good. This stuff you guys gave me is crap. But this story arc is what gave me my love for Outback. And we'll get to that next on the special missions, but over on Bravo team, we'll get more on that. But yeah, just Outback being sent out to get help for his friends. Because again, Stalker, he's the leader. He can't leave. And Snowjob and Quick Kick are severely injured, so they can't make it. So they've got no choice. And just that ending of, the Joe's like, well, we're going to go free him. Oh, he ain't. They came down from on high. They're on their own. They're cut off. Anyone that, goes after him is being disowned also. And just that look on Hawk's face there at the very end, just like, again, being my first major G.I. Joe story arc, I'm like, what the heck? I was 17 when this came out, so I'm like, what the heck's going on here? So yeah, no, it's just a fantastic issue. It's one I definitely remember when I think of G.I. Joe storylines. This whole Barovian story arc is one that I definitely fondly remember. So yeah, it was just a great issue. And then yeah, like you guys said, this was the first. I mean, technically G.I. Joe 50, when they introduced the special missions, that kind of referred to the special missions as the sister book. But yeah, this is the first storyline that led from one book to the other, where you had to go by special missions to find out what happened with Outback. And just commenting on the link that Brad mentioned that I shared, I'm really glad they didn't go with Todd McFarlane's artwork. I like Todd McFarlane. No disrespect to your cousin there, Brad, but I love Todd's work on Spider-Man. I think he's fantastic on Spider-Man. I loved his amazing Spider-Man run, the adjective of the Spider-Man run. He's a good artist. I like a Spawn run, but he's not a G.I. Joe artist.
Stay away from Stalker, McFarlane.
The way I'm looking through that. And first of all, I don't know who the cover is, just because Snake Eyes was cringeworthy. I mean, Snake Eyes, he's not even in this book or this issue, and they got him on the cover.
I thought he was Carl Weathers at first.
But yeah, I'm just looking through that. I definitely recommend, if you haven't looked at it yet, go check out that CBR.com link where it's got the pages that McFarlane did. And yeah, all the characters look different, but yeah, Stalker is probably the most atrocious. Yeah, and it looks like Outback's wearing like a Scottish cap or something there at the end when he's sitting underneath on McFarlane's book. Or when he's sitting underneath with Stalker bleeding on him. It looks like he's wearing a Scottish cap or something, which is very odd. But anyways, yeah, no, great issue, great story arc. I can't wait to get the rest of the story arc, underway, because yeah, it was fantastic. And again, as I talked about on some other shows, a buddy of mine, Billy, was also reading comics with. We both started around the same time, and we were both, every issue this came out, we'd get there and we'd read it, and then we talk about, what's going on with it, what we're hoping to see. And so, yeah, just a lot of fun memories of this issue. So it's fantastic. Love it. So unless anyone has anything else, and if I say people in the chat, if you want to say anything, feel free to throw it in there. I can put it on the air. If you want to rate the cover, if you're still there, Heinz, go ahead and give me a rating or your thoughts on this book. I can talk about it on the air also. But we'll go ahead and move on to the next segment, unless anyone has anything else they want to say about G.I. Joe issue 61 proper. The next one is
The Real American Hero.
this is a Joe or Cobra that did something special that does, or some other character in the book that deserves some special recognition. So let's go in reverse order. Kevin, do you have a Real American Hero for this issue?
Yeah, I want to give it to actually Billy in this one because I love that he just kind of, plays around and bitch slaps Fred and intimidates Bird dude, you know, and just showing like, yeah, you can't mess with me now. I'm a full on ninja, even though I got a fake leg and a one eye. I'll take you out. So, yeah, anyone that can intimidate Birdman, I'm good. So,
And Charles.
I got to give this to Spigu because at one point he's like, well, better than going to the gulag. Boom. Like
it's true.
that is hardcore Eastern European sensibility right there. He straight up, people he didn't know very well, didn't really have much of a chance if he did it, had no chance if he didn't, and sacrificed himself. And nobody remembers him, and no one says his name right. But he gave up his life in order to give other people a chance. And that is sort of the horror of war in this case, is that sacrifice won't be remembered at all. And that is the nature of war. So, definitely maybe this one time we can call him the real American hero.
Very nice. Good choice there. Yeah, I was going to say, when I hadn't read this in years, so when I started reading it again, when they first showed, he's their operative. At first, I'm like, did he turn on them? Is he a bad guy? He looks kind of skeevy, maybe. I don't know. And then when he ends up sacrificing himself, like, oh, wow, okay, no, wow, yeah, he is a good guy. Never mind then. So, yeah, definitely. That's a great choice. And Brad. Is yours Raptor? You know it's Raptor. Come on. No. Who's your real American hero, Brad?
You know what? My real American hero, I got to say it's Fred Seven, because it is what the kids today call a boss move, to up and shoot your actual boss in the back. It is sudden. It's a bit of a what the heck just happened here moment, but it injects a lot of energy into a storyline that had been feeling a little repetitive since issue 50. It shakes up the order. It shakes up the Cobra dynamic, and it kicks off what ends up being a pretty interesting storyline and a pretty entertaining one over the next dozen or so issues, to my recollection. So good for him.
Yeah, great choices, one and all. I'm going to have to give it up to Cobra Commander. Again, I like the fact that, everything he's done over the years, he's finally decided to turn over a new leaf. He's going to become a good guy. He's going to turn everything over and start his life.
How'd that work out for him?
Not very well. And yeah, he gets a bullet in the back, and we're never hear from him again. So just because this is Cobra Commander's final issue ever again, he never reappears. Now I got to give it to Cobra Commander. Just, that whole life changing, just seeing his son walk away from him finally after everything he's been through just broke him down enough. You know what? The hell with it, I'm giving up. I'm going to go straight. And yeah, but they were all great choices. Yeah, all three of you guys, I love them all. Let's go and move on to the next segment, which is the favorite page of art. So we'll go ahead and get started with Brad's choice. Brad, would you like to talk about your page of art?
Yeah, it is page 21. It is after the caca has hit the fan, and Stalker and Snowjob and Quick Kick are surrounded by the Barovnians, and Stalker gets a kick to the face, and the villain starts to sneer and everything, and we end with those two little panels of Outback hiding underneath the manhole cover with blood from Stalker's head wound trickling down, and it is just a great capper to an overall great issue, and it's one that I think it's been commented on already, so it's just a really great piece of storytelling.
Agreed. And I'm going to go to myself. This is my second choice. Actually, technically, it's my third choice. My second choice would have been the same one Brad picked, with the very end with Outback looking up and Stalker's blood dripping on. That's a great. I'm going for this one, my third choice.
Can I just say real quick? I'm glad that you picked this one, because I was trying to remember, when did the guys, the Joes, when they were all kind of dressed up in black and stuff.
Right.
And then at the end, they're in their normal outfits, and there's a subtle, I think it's the next issue or the next couple of pages. It looked like the explosion when they blew them back. It ripped off the top of their thing, so their Quick Kick's normal look is underneath it. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
But yeah, no, it's just a great page. Yeah, we get bear this in the Google log as the truck explodes. Just that boom, the explosion, the Joe's being thrown back. Like I said, there's a lot of great choices in this issue. So while this is my technically my third choice, it's by no far, bad choice. I like them all. And Charles, Kevin and Charles both chose the same page. So Charles, if you like to talk about it first, and then we'll get to Kevin.
I try not to steal Kevin's thunder too much, but I will say that they literally murdered in cold blood the head of the enemy organization as a B plot.
Yeah.
This isn't even the focus of this issue.
Yeah.
And I mean, okay. But at the end of it, so go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is page 11 for the listeners, if you're curious.
It's page 11.
And it's just so I mean, you have him throw the thing down, you have him do that. The absolute dynamics of the "you owe me" shot, him, his body just racking, and dude's like ripped. I don't know if we knew that Cobra Commander was like that ripped, but dude has biceps like. You get to see them as he gets blown so far forward that he's blown that forward and then manages to fall on his face with smoke still coming off the back there. It would be a much cooler shot, and I hate to say this because it feels like a betrayal, if Raptor wasn't standing there in that panel, because it kind of takes away a little from the smoking gun. But I mean, two of them right there, they've just shot their boss and it moves forward. It's cold-blooded. Love it. However, since the beginning of just this discussion, I've now noticed the little smudge marks everywhere on every face that would typically be kind of blended in on a more finished piece. And now they're bugging me. So thanks, guys, for bringing that into my life, because I can't unsee it. It's a fantastically set up scene. However, from an art perspective, it's certainly not perfect, but you can't really walk away from this. Nobody who saw this doesn't remember this page.
Yep. And Kevin.
Yeah, this is the one I picked for obvious reasons. And as Charles eloquently said, this was the B plot. And so some of you guys might know that I do a fun costume on the Finest G.I. Joe costume group, where I am undercover or incognito Cobra Commander. And my buddy in the group, Eric, he does a regular Cobra Commander and he does the armored Cobra Commander. And he hits me up in a message saying, "Hey, you got your Cobra outfit. You're bringing that to Dragon Con, right?" I'm like, yeah. It's like, make sure you bring it because I want to do something. And then he sent me a message saying, I want to create the scene because I have a Fred 7 costume. I'm going to recreate the scene where I shoot Cobra Commander in the back. And I'm like, hell yeah. So we met down in the lobby outside a restaurant, and we recreated the scene of him shooting Cobra Commander. Of course, I'm wearing a different outfit as Cobra Commander, but he had the helmet and of the battle armor one. So that's me laying dead there, getting shot in the back. If you're watching the video, make sure you check it out. It's me in costume with my good friend Eric of the Finest, recreating this famous scene.
Yeah, I love the touch of, he's holding the battle helmet there. That's nice. And I love the fact that you're holding the hairdryer gun.
Yes, I had to get the hairdryer gun for the costume because I don't have a regular Cobra Commander costume. This is my only Cobra Commander costume because everyone else in the Finest has versions of it, and I'm like, but I gotta get the hairdryer gun. And so yeah, that was a lot of fun creating that. Yes.
Yeah, no, and I love seeing your cosplay pictures. They're fantastic, man. Thank you for sharing those with me.
You bet. That was a lot of fun. I was glad to share this, though. But yeah,
I've seen these before. Yeah, when you resent them to me today to include, I'm like, oh yes, got to have these, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, what's so funny too is when I did a search, because I remember I wanted to kind of get like, I did a search online at the time of like this scene. But I didn't remember the cover of the damn magazine. I couldn't remember what it was. And it's just so weird that, as Charles said, it's a freaking B plot. That Cobra Commander gets gunned down in the back. I mean, come on.
Yeah, but no, this issue is great follow-up. Compared to last issue, which, as Brad was saying, or one of you guys were saying, that we kind of tore into last month on the show, or a couple months ago now. But on the last issue, last episode, we kind of tore into issue 60, just overall. And even here, I forgot to mention when it starts out, there's no mention of the new Joes. There's no mention of Hawk what just went through. It's just Hawk starting on the briefing, and it's like, the last issue didn't really happen. So,
we tore into Todd McFarlane. That's what we did.
Yes, well, yeah. Yes. Love that report, yes. But anyways, no, thank you for sharing those with us. And again, if
Brad will not be invited to McFarlane's cookouts anymore. Sorry about that, Brad.
No, that's nothing new.
So much for family, eh? But
I think he's probably sitting back with his like $1 million baseball and going, I don't really care.
these losers. But and if you're listening to the podcast, definitely go to the youtube.com/g.i.joe.headcast.
Yeah, you got to see my my undercover cover commander costume.
There, you have the costume. Hey, don't forget, I will post these on the Facebook group also. But yeah, if you're listening to the podcast, yeah, definitely check out. And that's why if you just listen to the podcast and don't join us on the fourth Sunday of the month, you miss out on these wonderful pictures of the show. And so fantastic. Thank you very much, Kevin, and thank you guys.
Yeah, you bet. That's fun.
They're all great choices. So next section is Postbox the Pit. So again, this isn't everybody. Again, I took advice from a fellow podcaster, a genius himself. And I'm just mentioning the main ones that either posted or left some other comment or whatever. So from Facebook, again, just a small handful. There's Kevin Reitzel. Thank you, Kevin, for all the posting all your pictures and the links to your shows and everything. I love it.
Thanks, man.
Also, there's Joe Jackson, who's always posting links and various pictures on the Facebook group. Ex-member of our show, Pat Sampson, who's posting the pictures of G.I. Joe stuff and his own shows. Again, Pat does a bunch of great shows. Check him out. In fact, they've got a G.I. Joe show themselves. We're looking at the books. And fellow podcaster and friend of mine, Gene Hendricks. Again, they're all four of these guys are always posting things on the Facebook group at facebook.com/group/G.I. Joe. Go there and check it out. And again, I don't do much of anything on Twitter, X, Instagram, and all that. So I don't have anything for those. But there's also Patreon. Again, patreon.com/headcastnetwork. If you like what we're doing here, go through a few bucks in the tin, and you can join the other Patreons, such as Gene Hendricks, Bill Bear, and as I mentioned at the top of the show, both Sean Adams and Big Danny Cool. Thank you guys very much for your support. And yeah, check out patreon.com/headcastnetwork. And moving on from Postbox the Pit, there before I go there's the links to the various places you can catch the show or read. I forgot YouTube on there. Facebook.com/group/G.I. Joe. Redex.com/G.I. Joe Headcast, Patreon.com/Headcast Network, and Instagram.com/Headcast Network. And of course, the email is gijoe@hitspeaks.com. Feel free to send us a message and I can read it on the air. Now, moving on to the Soldier of the Month. Again, this is someone that's done something either special for the show, for G.I. Joe, or for me personally, because again, I'm not above bribery. And this month, speaking of bribery, the Soldier of the Month. Well, it's going to be my wife, Michelle Moss.
Yay, Michelle.
For Valentine's Day, she gave me, in fact, this shirt. It's a G.I. Joe Lion shirt.
Nice.
A G.I. Joe hoodie. So
very cool.
So yeah, I love this shirt and my hoodie. So I've got to give it up for my wife, Michelle.
Damn right you do.
Also for petting up with me and my podcasting addiction and all that. To our Soldier of the Month from all of us here at G.I. Joe, a Real American Headcast in the Headcast Studios, we salute you. So that's going to wrap up the Mailbox of the Pit. We've got the comic covered. We're going to take a quick break, let you guys get something to drink, go to the bathroom, choose some heroin, whatever you guys need to do, and we'll be right back with the cartoon.
And I have to get going, so enjoy.
All right, Charles, glad you could
see you, Charles. Good to have you.
G.I. Joe will return after these messages.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. Here are the other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. Culture Clash, where we discuss the latest in entertainment and pop culture. Blooded Kings, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theater, we celebrate our favorite movies. And Time Warp, our fandom flashback show discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie, TV, and pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Hair Metal Podcast, we cover the rock metal music of the 80s and early 90s. Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, discussing the time-traveling Doctor Who universe. Lethal Mullet, an action film podcast covering the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Also, check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, our Star Wars podcast. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier. The Fandom Show, our Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube show discussing the hottest topics in fandom. the True Believers MCU podcast discussing the Marvel Cinematic and Television Universe, Union Federation, our Star Trek, and the Orville Show. And we're proud to welcome the BQN Network to the Fandom Podcast Network. Please visit our friends on the BQN Network, a Star Trek Universe podcast that also includes your favorite topics, movies, history, superheroes, and more. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on all major podcast platforms. The Fandom Podcast Network audio master feed is on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
In 1974, four men literally changed the face of rock and roll forever.
Gene Simmons, Peter Criss, Ace Frehley, and Paul Stanley wanted to become the band they never got to see.
Over the next 40 plus years, the music, the makeup, the merchandise, and the loyal fan base have propelled KISS to one of rock and roll's elite groups.
With KISS heading down their end of the road tour, we thought we would start our journey.
Turn it up to 10 because we love it loud.
Right Between the Eyes is a podcast all about our favorite band, KISS.
We will be covering all eras of KISS with the various albums, studio, live, and compilations, plus album mashups and more.
We will also cover solo and band projects from all members, past and present, while also looking at the various bands that have opened for KISS as well.
Not to mention all of the fun items in the KISS catalog. TV appearances, long-form videos, merchandise, comic books. Come on, the list goes on and on.
Coming in late May, early June 2021 to a podcast platform near you.
Follow us on Twitter at RBTE Podcast. Loud. I want to hear it loud. Right between the eyes.
I want to hear it loud. Right between the eyes. Loud. I want to hear it loud. Turn it out. Drama, lust, snark, comedy, heartbreak, creativity, poetry, illicit affairs, rage, revenge, testosterone poisoning, gunshots, sculpture, feminine hygiene products, naked car crashes,
You know what we haven't had in a long time?
and liver. Terry Moore's Strangers in Paradise, the audio adaptation, coming to your ear holes in late 2020 on the Two True Freaks Podcast Network.
Liver is my life.
Now back to G.I. Joe.
So, welcome back to the show. Charles had to dip out. He had some other stuff going on. So, as Brad was just saying, now there's three. So, next up is G.I. Joe, the cartoon.
Yo, Joe! He'll fight for freedom wherever there's trouble. G.I. Joe is there. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe is there. It's G.I. Joe against Cobra the enemy, fighting to save the day. He never gives up. He's always there, fighting for freedom over land and air. G.I. Joe! G.I. Joe is there.
G.I. Joe is the code name for America's daring, highly trained Special Mission Force. Its purpose, to defend human freedom against Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world.
He never gives up, he'll stay till the fight's won. G.I. Joe will dare. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe.
So, this episode was entitled The Pit of Vipers, directed by John Gibbs and Terry Lennon. The writer of this was James M. Ward, with a story by Flint Dill. The first aired November the 27th, 1985. And the synopsis from Wikipedia. Colonel Sharp buys an advanced computer program codenamed Watchdog to be the new G.I. Joe commander until they discover it's owned by Cobra. The program orders Admiral Ledger on the USS Flag to attack the Cobra ship Cerebus, but it disappeared in the Indian Ocean. Now, Flint, Lady J, and Heavy Metal have to take out the Watchdog alongside its foe designer, Dr. Hamler. So let's get some thoughts on this episode. Kevin, do you have notes?
I got notes. By the way, a little trivia on this one. The first and only speaking role for the character of Heavy Metal. We have a Heavy Metal appearance in this. Heavy Metal! Yes. A good friend of mine, Steven, does a good Heavy Metal costume, so I always like him. Man, I've said this before, guys. What do I always say about Cobra Fortresses? They have the best Cobra Fortresses. Whoever designs them is just phenomenal. I love that. Lady J says, how did they build that without our satellites picking it up? We'll get to answer to that later. Gotta tell you, watching this episode today, I know these episodes push the toys on us. Forgot how cool those Awe Strikers are. Is that what those are called? Those little dune buggies?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Watchdog hologram program. Kind of like an early AI, so to speak, I think. Yeah, just want to mention.
Yeah.
And I always, you know, when we watch these shows, guys, whenever there's a new doctor in town, we always know it's like, you know, one of two people. It's either the Baroness or it's Zartan. Yep, it was Zartan. Dr. Hamler is definitely was sus. I love that the G.I. Joe team was sent on wild goose chases chased by the watchdog. We find out why. And I got to tell you, I love the Cerebus, that underwater station. That looked really, really, really cool. One of the things that jumped out at me as well. And I just love Shipwreck in the Shark, too. And this kind of felt like a Shipwreck episode. And, you know, love my Shipwreck. Love my Shipwreck. He was my first G.I. Joe finest costume as well. Okay. Who doesn't love a gigantic Cobra drill? There was a Cobra drill toy, but it was like a little one-man one that that was released. But man, how cool would have this made a great large playset toy, like a gigantic one, and you could like put other little smaller figures inside. You can like open up the top and have a little command center. That thing was cool. I love the Cobra drill. I thought it was really, really cool. And the best quote by Cobra Commander, "Let's reach out and crush someone." That made me laugh. Love the battle at the Cobra Fortress. It was just a cool looking Cobra Fortress. I was kind of questioning, though, the little mini armada of mini G.I. Joe one-man tanks, you know, that toy with the little two guns in the front. And it's just like a G.I. Joe driving one thing. I'm like, I don't know how much punch those things really have. I mean, shouldn't you have like real G.I. Joe tanks like the Maulers or at least the Mobats or something? I noticed, too, that there are several of the laser sounds that I think were taken from the Battlestar Galactica laser blasts from the TV show Battlestar Galactica. I think I've mentioned that before, though. And I thought it was kind of cool that Scarlet and Breaker, I think it was Breaker, where they break into the big drill weapon and they come up below and I guess bring in the lava up from below to help destroy the Cobra Fortress. And I got to ask you guys, watch the end of this episode where Shipwreck, I don't know, I was watching the episode on Tubi. What the hell did Shipwreck say after the joke of next time you're going to bring us a watchdog, make sure it's a Cocker Spaniel? And then he looks at the camera and he goes, "Arg, arg," and then it ends. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
What the hell did he say at the end of that episode?
I think his brain shut off and he's just, whatever, I'm done.
Brad muted himself and he's laughing so hard right now. You can't hear him laughing because I think he knows what I'm talking about.
I was on mute. Yeah, I was on mute. I admit it.
What the hell was that? Watch the end of the episode and you tell me, guys.
And
back to you,
Brad.
Oh yeah. And note for the people listening to us go on about this. Yes, Tubi is great. Tubi's got all the old G.I. Joe episodes and the Transformers and a lot of other great 80s shows. So you can definitely kill a better part of your afternoon just watching old G.I. Joe cartoons, as I did today. So, it's funny, Kevin, you mentioned that Cobra made awesome bases in this.
Yes,
and
the architecture's phenomenal.
I feel Hasbro really dropped the ball by not making like a Cobra Command Center one of their big featured vehicle base things in some mid 80s era of G.I. Joe. Yes, they had the Terradrome, which kind of works, but think of like something on the scale of the Kenner Death Star inspired Cobra Fortress. That would have been amazing. But
they could release a coffee table book of just of Cobra Fortresses.
Yeah,
I mean, it's pretty, and like the ones from like issue 21. How beautiful was that Cobra Fortress that Snake Eyes had to infiltrate? It's amazing.
Yeah, I've seen online somebody's posted pictures. I think it was like a 3D printed custom model of that fortress. I guess they call it the Silent Fortress from Silent Interlude. It's got little perches for Cobra soldiers to sit on and everything like that. So you kind of have to rely on the customization 3D community. But that is neither here nor there. Speaking of digressions, I never thought I'd say this with a G.I. Joe cartoon released 40 years ago, but topical for this one. Turning control of the armed forces over to a computer, and AI. Obviously, it's inspired by War Games, the movie, but also a bit of the Terminator and Skynet, and I'm sure many episodes of the original Star Trek series had a computer take control of things and make a big mess of it. That seemed to be like every other episode of Star Trek, but it is one of those classic sci-fi tropes, and as I remember it, even back in the day, there was big debate in turning over control of military hardware to computers because they were supposedly more efficient and faster, which to some equals better. And here we are today, and people seem to want to turn off or turn more decision-making over to computers, to AI and tech. And I have to say, tech companies, the new Cobra, I mean,
stop it.
Think of it. I mean, when you think of it, if you think of certain big tech gurus, they all kind of give off that sleazy used car salesman vibe. So, maybe, if you start seeing Cobra symbols popping up in more and more places, you may begin to wonder these things, right? But, all in all, this is a really fun episode. And with the cartoon, I'm always happy to see, I guess we'll call them the B-tier Joes, get some screen time. Like Ace is in this a lot, which is really great to see because you don't really get a lot of those specialized guys who were accompanying vehicles, maybe with the exception of Wild Bill. But and you mentioned Heavy Metal getting
what toy did Heavy Metal come with again? What was it? Do you guys remember?
Didn't he come with one of the tanks? Was it
Mauler?
It was the Mauler, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, but then we also had Breaker, which is always nice to see as well. It's old school Joe. I'm very thrilled that Hasbro has announced that they're doing a classified retro Breaker coming out later this year, so I can grab him and add him to my original 12, 13 GI Joes in the classified line. And of course, the episode really does belong to Shipwreck, who out of the gate was a fan favorite and just really seems to dominate this first season of the cartoon. I think he landed with the audience. I think the characterization they gave him, a little bit of Jack Nicholson swagger, really resonated, and they really got a lot of mileage out of him. Though I have to say, he kind of blows a big opportunity at the end to take out Cobra Commander and Destro at the end of the episode when they're fighting. He just kind of he just unties himself and he exits, whispers goodbye, talks about spaniels, barks at the camera. He didn't do any sabotage. He just walks on out of the base, which brings us back to the beginning of this comment, which is again echoing Kevin. With so many Cobra bases, so many great Cobra bases all over the world, you'd think at least one of them would have locks on the doors, preventing prisoners from just exiting and strolling away to freedom. So they process of elimination, they may have got to it eventually, but I guess the cartoon and the toy line was canceled before. They said we need to put locks on the doors.
They spent their budget on Cobra insignias on everything.
You're putting giant snake heads on everything. No one could think to say, you put a door here, get a locksmith. It's kind of like a little key card, so you have to be authorized to get through the doors. I mean, think of all the prisoners we keep losing here and there. But they had their vibe and they stuck with it. They committed to the bit, as we say. Yeah. But that's where I'm going to leave my thoughts.
I just wanted to follow up on something that Brad was talking about when he was mentioning the Cobra fortresses, and it would be great if there was like a play set of like that. I remember when I did one of my early trips to Germany, I went to a city called Staunton. Starts with an X, but it's pronounced with an S. And they had you could visit an old Roman base, basically. And some of the original walls were still there, including the little Colosseum they had inside. And then the walls that weren't there, they planted these great gigantic like hedges around it, so you could see what the base would look like. And we found out that a lot of the bases that the Romans had done when they'd gone around and conquered all the countries, that when they made a Roman base, they did a lot of them the same and put the church in a particular area. They put, the Roman soldiers' barracks in one area. And if there was a little arena, the arena was always in a certain area. So when they're visiting Caesars or visiting generals would come, they would know their way around it comfortably with this. And I was thinking when I was watching this that they must have the same Cobra architect, because he comes in, he's like, all right, what do you want? Do you guys want the battle arena? Maybe Duke will show up again. Who knows? So I'm wondering if they're yeah, do you want this? Do you want that? So I was kind of chuckling to myself while I was watching this episode.
Very nice. And my thought, again, you guys have echoed a lot of my own thoughts on this. A few things that I do want to mention, though. Of course, with me on the screen there, trouble bubbles. Do I need to say
troubles? I thought of you when they came on the screen, by the way.
Thank you. I don't know what it is. I know Charles and some of the guys over on the role-playing game have mentioned how they're, not physically possible and da-da-da. Shut up.
Exactly.
Let me some trouble. Ace, I think it was Ace, says, blow in my headphones and I'll follow you anywhere, Lady J. I don't know if that would fly in today's political climate. That may get, actually, no. In the current, maybe with the present presidency, maybe it would. Anyways. Yeah, I heard them that could be trouble with the PC crowd. I don't know. And yeah, I think it was Kevin mentioned, the Cobras at the Joe's fight at the beginning. It was early CGI. I love that, they referenced it, CGI back in the 80s. It was fantastic. And now we got AI and all that. So definitely. Talking about lines, I like when Shipwreck was talking about Cerebus. Sounds like the dog fed itself. Made me chuckle. And of course, yes, Shipwreck disobeyed orders to go off and find Cobra. Got tosses walkie-talkie's communicator out the window or whatever, and are you there, Shipwreck? He's turned it off. No, he did more than turn it off. He ditched it. And my other thought on this, is again, kind of what being very topical, using the U.S. government to undermine our country. I'm not going to make any more comments on that. I don't want to piss anyone off. But anyways, no, it was great. Yeah, I like Zart. Yeah, like Brad said, if a scientist shows up, they're evil or Zartan or Baroness. And yes, this was Zartan. So very nice. It's very, very good call. I mean, you could probably guess from the beginning when there's a new scientist. So yeah, it was definitely a great episode. Yeah, some episodes are better than others. Some are worse than others. This one here was a good episode. I enjoyed it. It doesn't hurt that we had trouble bubbles. But that drill, as you guys have both said, would make a great play set.
That drill was, I really enjoyed that. That was one of the coolest Cobra vehicle weapons of all time. That would have made a great play set. That was so cool. A great shot you have here of the picture of the Cobra Fortress with the lava blowing up from inside and coming out of it. I thought that was very cool.
And I threw the link that Brad sent us about the G.I. Joe diorama Silent Castle Cobra headquarters. It's in the chat, so if you guys want to check that out.
Yeah.
Ooh, yes, please.
It looks even cooler than I remembered it. I was looking at some of the finer details on it. There's a Cobra throne in there and everything. I'm like, man, that's pretty awesome.
And I got some spam in the chat also. Congested halfback looks like. Thanks. Again, as we're talking about AI. Thank you for chiming in, AI. But yeah, no, it's a great episode. Yeah, I enjoy the base there, just lava coming out of every orifice and just exploding on itself and just exploding. Cobra Commander, again, doing what Cobra Commander does best, taking the chair and just smashing the monitors. And meanwhile, as Shipwreck talked about, I'm out of here.
That Silent Castle, by the way, I'm looking at it right now. That's pretty darn cool. Oh, man.
Yeah, and then we have to end on a joke, Shipwreck, and then his dog barking, where the hell that was.
Yeah, please, guys, let me know what the hell he says at the end of that thing. I just heard
I was checking out joeguide.com because they list a lot of things about the episodes. And yeah, all they leave it with is that, I'm like, well, maybe they'll show me there what he said, because they sometimes will break it down a little bit more and give us quotes and things from the show. But yeah, no, they left that with saying Shipwreck then jokes with Colonel Sharp that if the brass at the Pentagon wants to buy a Joe as a watchdog, they should make it a Cocker Spaniel. And they leave off the whole whatever it was he said there at the end. So I don't.
You guys saw that, right? It's not just me.
Okay. Yeah, not just you. I don't know. Maybe I'll put the DVD in and check and see if maybe it's different on there. Maybe something got mangled.
Yeah, it's
But
weird. Like Tubi, I wonder if Tubi did something with it.
I don't know, but yeah, no, I watch it on Tubi also. I've got the DVDs, but yeah, it's just easier. Throw it on my, throw the Tubi on and just sit there and watch it without having to get up and pull the DVD out. And find me, I've got a Blu-ray player hooked up somewhere and play it. I can just watch it from the cover, without moving. So thank you, Tubi. And yeah, like you just said, I definitely recommend Tubi. They have a lot of I've got a lot of shows.
Yeah,
watch. So
I find a lot of movies that on the Fandom Podcast Network that we cover. That they'll carry a lot of these old movies, and I don't mind watching them with a commercial here and there just to find them because no one else has them. And Tubi's been a great way. And I love it when you turn on Tubi, it goes Tubi.
Yes, another thumbs up recommendation for Tubi. Fantastic. Yeah, yes, Kevin, you're right. So that would be the cartoon. Unless you guys have any other thoughts on any of this.
I love visiting the cartoons with you on this. I'm glad you do it. I don't watch ahead on these. I watch them. I kind of feel like I'm coming home after. It reminds me, I'm coming home after school to hang out and talk about the cartoon with you guys. It's great. I love it.
And I love having you guys on. I love talking the comic and especially the cartoons with you guys.
Yeah.
I say here a couple years during COVID when I was working swing shift, I'd get home at 1:00 in the morning, and like at 2:00 in the morning, they'd show a couple episodes on somewhere. I forget where it was at now. So I'd sit there and watch them, and I'd live tweet my thoughts on them. But
I remember you doing that.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun following you on that. Yeah. That was cool.
Yeah, I'd get off work at like 1:00 or 12:30.
Yeah. What else you going to do during COVID? I'm going to go ahead and watch Aaron Headmoss tweet about G.I. Joe cartoons, man.
It's good attention. What the heck? I'll sit there and watch a couple of cartoons. I got my computer there. I'll send my thoughts on it. No one cares.
Yeah.
That's all right. I care. So, and Kevin cares. So thank you, Kevin. I appreciate the feedback, my friend.
You bet, dude.
But that'll do it for this episode. Brad, if someone was a new podcaster in the podcasting world, where would they be podcasting at?
Oh, well, you will certainly be finding me spilling my thoughts on movies, pop culture, Gen X nostalgia, and more at the Celluloid Heroes podcast, which, of course, is now a freshly minted member of the Longbox Crusade podcast network. So I got to give thanks to Pat Sampson for inviting me to join. I got to give Jared Albrecht a thanks for threatening Pat into making me a member and inviting me to join up. So thanks to you as well, Jared. But in the meantime, you'll find me at my website, brideabraham.com. And my social media handle for the social media I generally don't handle is not Bride Abraham. But the Celluloid Heroes pod is the feed on Instagram where I tend to post most of the updates about when a new episode's about to drop, some other ephemera. And I will add, if you're ever in the Boston area, I have a new side gig as programmer and host of the Gen X Movie Club at the West Newton Cinema on a monthly basis. So if you're in town at the time of one of our shows and a screening is concurrent, come out, say hi, say you heard me on the Headcast, and I'll maybe buy you a popcorn. But I won't hold your hand during the scary parts.
That's cool. That sounds like a fun gig.
There goes that. I'm not coming. If you're not going to hold my hand. Oh. And Kevin Reitzel, if people want to hear more from you, besides SallyWaxSally.com.
SarahWaxSally.com.
I still remember that.
I need to like make a Twitter with that. That's funny. Please listen to past episodes of the G.I. Joe podcast and figure out what that's about. My name's Kevin, and you can find me at Spartan_Phoenix on all of the socials, including Blue Sky. I've recently reached that one. Also I'm a big movie guy. Follow me on Letterboxd as well. That's where I keep track of all the movies I watch and also rate. But I'm the co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network with my buddy Kyle. Make sure you check out the Fandom Podcast Network on all your podcast catchers, but more importantly, also on YouTube, where we cover a bunch of really fun fandoms there, including Star Wars and Star Trek and the Orville and Highlander and one of my favorites that we do is Couch Potato Theater, where we celebrate our favorite movies. And this year we are celebrating the 80s action films from Canon. We're doing that. And we're also doing a special limited series of Couch Potato Theater where it's called Be Kind and Rewind, where we look back at films that either we didn't like at first and neither did the popular culture, but maybe we've changed our mind on them. And the first one we're going to be doing is the 2011 film with Ryan otherwise known as Green Lantern. We're going to be returning to that. And we also, one of my other favorites that I do too is called Time Warp, where we're looking back at an entire year of movies. It's a monthly podcast, so there'll be 12 episodes. And this year we're celebrating the year of 1990, 35th anniversary of all those movies and events. And we don't just talk about the movies, we talk about the TV shows and pop culture and music that happened during that same month. So hence we take you back into Time Warp. So make sure you check out the Fandom Podcast Network. And also, too, hair metal will be returning as well. If you're an 80s metal fan, we'll be returning to those podcasts as well. So, yeah, check us out, Fandom Podcast Network, and I'm Spartan Phoenix on all the socials.
Very nice. And of course, you can find me at headcast.headspeaks.com. That's my main website. As I've talked about earlier, all the different places I'm at. There's YouTube, Facebook. I'm not on Blue Sky yet, but I'll probably join there eventually at some point. But I don't do what I should on the ones I already got. So I'm hesitant to join another one just to ignore. But because I don't have enough hours in the day for everything. But anyways, yes, I do have my shows. I've got Head Speaks, which comes out the first Tuesday of the month. The second Tuesday of the month is Task Force X, which is about ready to end. And the third Tuesday of the month, I have the Starman Adventure Show. Again, that one's going to be ending here in the next couple of months. And then on Thursdays, the first Thursday of the month, normally I do the Starbright Project with the wife due to daughter's band and everything that's been on hold for right now. We're looking to get back into that. The second Tuesday of the month, this very show you're listening to, G.I. Joe, a Real American Headcast. The third Thursday of the month, again, I had Charles on earlier. He's one of the fellow players in the Renegade Studios G.I. Joe role-playing game. We recorded that, and I released that the third Thursday of the month as G.I. Joe, the Energon Protocols. The fourth Thursday of the month, we have Bravo Team. Like I say, this next Bravo Team will be tying into this episode and this issue. We'll be looking at Special Missions number 6. Again, spoilers, fantastic issue. But join us there and be sure to send us an email to gijoe@headspeaks.com. So before we sign out, I do want to do one more thing real quick. I've been doing these at the end of the episode, but we're going to do that right here.
Hey, Joey, watch this! Davey, come back! The ice can break! You're breaking my heart! Ah! Help me!
Hold it! Don't go on the ice! You'll only add more weight!
Snow job!
Find something that'll reach.
This branch ought to work.
Remember, frozen ponds and rivers may not be totally frozen.
We could be skating on thin ice. Now we know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
And again, I didn't plan any of this out. This is the PSA that aired with this episode when it first aired. But I thought it was very fitting that Snow Job was in this PSA, and he was one of the stars of today's issue. So,
if only It's a Wonderful Life, Jimmy's character had seen that PSA, he wouldn't have fallen in there saving his brother that way and lost hearing in his ear.
Yeah. Great movie. Love that one. But anyways, that is our episode. I want to thank everyone that's watching it live. Thanks that's listening to the podcast. And again, extra special thanks to my fellow hosts, Brad, Kevin, and Charles. I thank you guys for joining me.
Nice job on the slides, by the way. It's nice to see those on YouTube.
Yes.
Yeah. Keep that going.
Yes, I steal from better people than I am. And Kevin recommended that. So again, I'm going to try doing this again. Making it more user-friendly and making it more exciting for those watching on YouTube. So again, if you're watching it, hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. And again, I forget to do all these things. Also, you can call and leave a message at 1-559-500-3182. That's the Headcast voicemail line. Again, it's 559-500-3182. Call and leave a message and let us know what you think about this episode, about the cartoon, about the comic book, about the PSA. I'm willing to hear what you guys have to say. But until next time, remember, knowing is half the battle. Yo, Joe. G.I. Joe, a Real American Headcast, is available monthly on iTunes, Stitcher, and at headspeaks.com. All characters and stories are owned and trademarked by their respective owners. We claim no ownership other than our opinions. All audio and images are used for entertainment purposes and falls under fair use. We make no money from this headcast. For more of the monthly G.I. Joe, check out the IDW series. For the stories we're covering, look for the comics and trade paperbacks. Let us know what you think. Send us an email letting us know your thoughts. Joe's
Dismissed.